What's up, Big 12 Nation? It is Tuesday night in America. That can mean only one thing. It's time for another edition of your favorite YouTube-centric Big 12 college football theme. That's right. It is the one. It is the only. It is the Biggest 12 with me, your host, Clint Foster. Wherever you are, thank you so much for making us part of your Tuesday night. Boy, howdy, do we have a great show for you. If you are into sadomasochism, it's time for me to say good things about Baylor, people. All right, this happens approximately one time a year. They may not be great at girls basketball anymore, but they might be very good at football this year, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I need some things from you. The main thing I need from you, I mean, this is a given. Subscribe to the show. Come on, do the thing. Help us grow this thing. Help us make this thing go like international. I'm thinking big, okay? Tomorrow, Europe. All right. The next day, the stars. Okay. But you got to subscribe to at Big 12 BOCFB. There it is right there. Hop on over to YouTube if you're watching us on Twitter. What's up? And do that. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a share. Tell your friends, family, and enemies about us. And also follow me at Clint Foster Comedy on YouTube and at Clint_Foster55 on Twitter. Make sure that you're connecting with the voice of college football on Twitter and Instagram. Connect with the voice of college football on Twitter and Instagram. Check out our latest takes, ratings, and rankings. You can find us at VOCFB. Very, very easy to do. And also catch the Biggest 12 live on your favorite audio platform. We're on all of them. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. So go there. And, if you can't catch us live, or even if you do catch us live, make us part of your commute. I mean, how much more knowledgeable are you going to be if you're listening to the Biggest 12 multiple times a week? Hey, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but you should really consider it. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this sucker rolling. I got some outstanding guests, as always. Okay, if I can be counted on for anything, it's great guests on these shows, especially these preview shows. So, you know them, you love them. First of all, from the Bear Den Pod, we have Matt Workman and the one and only Shahan Jayaraja, ladies and gentlemen. My Bear friends, how are you two doing on this Tuesday?
Doing good. You could have said Shahan, and then some jabroni is also joining us. But yes, we're doing great over here.
Yeah, I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me. And by the way, if you're watching the video, I promise I don't live in a big white void. We're just redoing my bookcases right now.
Hey, well, they're looking nice. They're looking nice. So can't wait to see them filled up with books. And yes, Brownie, my name is in green. That's the sort of sacrifices that you have to make on Baylor night. But before we get rolling about any Baylor Bear related stuff, I didn't get to have either of y'all on last off season whenever we were talking about Baylor football. So we got to indoctrinate you into the Biggest 12 way of doing things with a silly game. So we're going to create a tier list of all of the greatest Bears. Okay. So this is, and not Baylor Bears. I'm just talking like just Bears. Okay. This is, dare I say, a pretty exhaustive list of, every fictional Bear that matters. And we're going to get to the bottom of who among them are the best Bears. Are y'all down to clown here?
Oh yeah,
let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So these are in no particular order at all. We'll just go ahead and start at the end. First, we got Yogi and Boo Boo Bear, of course, from Central Park. He was Jellystone Park and his picnic basket stealing ways. Where do y'all stand on
Central
Yogi Bear?
Park? I was about to say Central Park.
Central Park, yeah.
Is RFK involved?
Yeah. Well, I should have included that bear, actually. RFK's dead bear. We can add him in later. What about Yogi Bear? Where are we putting Yogi on the tier list?
I say him as a solid B. He kind of set the stage, I think, for Bears in some ways, but we've improved since then, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, he is a classic. He does involve himself in like grand larceny, but
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Definitely. A lot of these Bears are not averse to doing crimes. We'll say that. On that note, we have the Three Bears crime family from Puss in Boots. I don't know if either of y'all saw Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, but the Three Bears crime family also doing crimes. Where would we rank them on the tier list?
It's interesting. I did see that film. Surprisingly good film.
Very good. I loved it.
It is very funny. I would put him below Yogi. So I would say like a C level because they are organized crime.
Yeah. Shahan, did you catch Puss in Boots: The Last Wish?
Man, I've not seen a movie since well before my daughter was born. So no, it definitely, if I had an extra 2 hours, that was not my top priority.
Well, one of these days, get yourself around to it. We'll put them on the C tier then. Okay, I'll just keep going this way. So I have Muck and Luck, the polar bears who fear the water from Balto. We're throwing it back to a more classic animated film from my childhood. Are either of y'all Balto familiar?
Familiar. Yeah, familiar. It's been a while. It's been a while. I view them as being a little bit in the middle to lower tier, probably in that C or D range.
Yeah, I'll just defer to y'all on that front.
Okay, so Muck and Luck, voiced by Phil Collins, for whatever that's worth.
Oh, okay. That's worth some points. That's worth some points.
Okay,
I think so. I think so.
Okay. Next I have Gentle Ben. Geez, I don't know if this was in the 70s, 60s when this show was, but it's a little boy who was friends with a bear named Ben. And I'm fairly certain that Michael Jackson's song Ben got co-opted with this show somehow. I'm not entirely sure, so don't fact check me on that.
Yeah, but don't look at me. I have no idea what's going on.
Where do we stand on Gentle Ben?
Yeah,
he looks like he could throw back a Dr. Pepper, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'll put him at D just because we need something in the D range.
Okay. Sorry, Gentle Ben. Okay. Tell me that you two are at least Avatar: The Last Airbender fans.
Not a super fan, but I am a fan. I am a fan.
Yes.
You've watched the show. Okay.
I've watched the show.
All right. So maybe the only normal animal in that show, we have Bosco, the Earth King's pet bear. Where does he check in for y'all? He does wear BAYLOR colors.
I think that's a C for me. I think that he's right there in the middle.
Yeah, for the just for the fact that he wears green, he'll put him at C.
Yeah, I mean, Brownie's got y'all. Y'all are being very tough bear critics right now.
Oh, we're getting to some better ones, man. We're getting to some better ones.
Well, I mean, we are bear aficionados over here.
That is true. That is true. Oh, okay. My mom is fact checking. Gentle Ben was 1967 to 69. Thank you, Mom. Okay. So next up, I've got Paddington Bear and his marmalade sandwiches.
S tier, definitely
S tier, definitely S tier.
Easy S tier.
Yeah.
Great flicks, great books. Who doesn't love Paddington Bear? How about the Care Bears and their stare?
C or D. I mean, it doesn't really move me. Let's put him in D. I think that.
Yeah.
Because Care Bears,
they're not regulated, and so I don't really understand.
Gotta be very careful about that.
Yeah, where are the checks and balances with the Care Bears? Yeah. Like who's overseeing them, making sure they're not breaking any laws? Yeah. Okay, so we got Little John from Disney's Robin Hood. I dare say the best Robin Hood ever, maybe. But what do y'all think about?
For me, John is S tier bear.
I was leaning a little more towards A. I don't know that I'm hitting. What do you think, Clint? I'm on the fence.
I mean, with Lil Jon, he's voiced by the same guy who's the voice of Baloo, whose name's escaping me at the moment. Classic Disney voice actor. Sure. The movie's a fun time. Anytime Roger Miller's pumping tunes into a movie, you can't go wrong.
It's definitely one of my favorite Disney films as a child.
Yes.
I'm gonna put Lil Jon in S tier. I'm gonna go along with Matt. I think he deserves to be there. Next, we have from South Park, the sexual harassment panda. As we all know, whenever he sees sexual harassment, it makes him a sad panda. So where do we put him on the tier list?
I'm as a BAYLOR fan, I'm hesitant to comment on anything sexual harassment related.
Does that automatically put him in D?
Yeah, I think that's D tier. I'm not touching anything.
Yeah.
No sexual harassment panda, sorry. Okay, what about Ted, who is the Seth MacFarlane teddy bear?
Yeah, I think I think I would put him in the A tier. I think
A-tier,
that he's not S tier, but like I think it's a very good character. I think it's done better than it should be.
That's fair. Okay,
For sure.
that's fair. Next up, we got Smokey Bear.
S
S
all day.
tier.
S all day.
Bro has never worn a shirt ever, right? He's just trying to prevent forest fires.
Trust me, we'll swing back around to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we got Po from Kung Fu Panda. I've actually never seen any of the Kung Fu Panda movies. Believe it or not.
I didn't realize that they kept releasing them. I liked the first one. I think I saw the second one and it was okay. I'm fine putting him AB. What are you guys thinking?
I would say I'm like with Jehan. I've seen the first two, but they must be good. They keep on pumping them out. So I would say like in the A. Let's put him at B with Yogi.
Okay, B tier with Yogi.
I mean, if Yogi's B, then we probably need
to
not put Po ahead of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Brownie coming in clutch. Phil Harris is Little John and Baloo's voice actor. Also, Thomas O'Malley in Aristocats. That's another fun fact.
Oh, how about that?
All right. Next, we got Corduroy Bear. He's wearing some nice green corduroy overalls. Did any of y'all read the book as a kid?
Oh yeah. When we read it now to our daughter, although it's a little long for her right now. But I'm happy to put him in the A tier. I don't think he's S, but I think that he is one of the classic childhood bears.
You agree with that assessment, Matt?
Yeah, I can agree. Since we're talking literature, let's put him at A.
Literature.
Yeah, literature bears. All right. This next one, this is a clear S for me. Actually, the next two are S's for me, but Fozzie Bear from the Muppets. The Muppet stand-up comedian.
I'm okay with this.
Yeah, S is fine.
No, I don't have any objection to that.
See, I think that Fozzie to me is an S, but Winnie the Pooh is an S plus. Like that's I feel like he is like top tier bear for me. And again, he swings around. We got one only with pants, we got one only with shirts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But together we got a full outfit.
Together we have one outfit.
They're unstoppable. Okay, next Baloo from Jungle Book. Where are we putting Baloo?
I think the A range. I think A is good. I think that he's not quite as iconic as some of the S tier bears, but he is still very, very iconic. I think I'd kind of put him in the corduroy camp.
Okay. He did raise a child, but he may have taught him some like bad habits.
That's true.
So,
but who among us has not, right?
I have two teenagers, so I know.
Yeah. Next, we have the Berenstain Bears. Okay, have y'all also fallen victim to the Mandela effect of calling them the Berenstain Bears?
Oh yeah, of course. Also, for people who are listening who might not know, Dave Aranda, big Berenstain Bears guy.
So for that reason, it has to be S tier. Just because it's arraigned.
I was leaning A, but this is, I guess, the Baylor show, so I guess we got to keep it in the S tier.
There you go. Next, we have the bear from The Revenant that mauls Leonardo DiCaprio.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad this is here.
Yeah.
This is just for mauling DiCaprio. I think it's S, just for that reason alone.
No, come on.
I mean, he did get Leo an Oscar, so
this is an Oscar-winning bear.
But at the same time, it was like an all right, damn here Oscar. Like it wasn't a wow, brilliant movie Oscar. It wasn't brilliant bear Oscar. I would vote B tier. We could maybe we can maybe compromise and put him
split the
at
difference
A
in
if
A.
you want. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Split the difference in A. All right, I should have kept him for last, but because these next two aren't as exciting. Yeah. So we got Lotso, the bear that smells like strawberries.
Yeah, get him out of here, man. He is a D. He's a D.
Megalomaniac.
Is a D. He is.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I've never understood why they sell stuffed versions of Lotso. I'm like, he is a genocidal maniac. Like, why are we selling stuffed Lotzos? This is crazy.
He actually has a job in the administration right now. It's weird.
Let's move on past that.
So, last bear I've got for you, another bear Muppet, but a full-size Muppet, Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yeah, I think that the D bears are like notably terrible, and the B bears are pretty good. And I think that Bear in the Big Blue House is right in the middle, so put him in the C tier.
Okay, he is a homeowner, so good for him. Not everyone can say that these days. But okay, there you go. So, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, your official bear tier list. And yes, I did not include the Coke polar bear or cocaine bear. That's my bad. But I feel like 20 bears is plenty. So yeah, I feel like we've done good work here today.
I love it. Yeah, no, you started slow with some of the bears that were on this list. That's why we had to stick in the C tier for a while, but we knew that better was coming down the pipe. That's why we couldn't give out S's and A's too early.
That's a very solid S tier of bears right there. You literally can't go wrong with any of those. All right, gentlemen. Well, let's talk about some Baylor Bears. Most of the people who are watching this show, probably their favorite versions of bears, Dr. Pepper swilling bears. So first, let's talk about last season and how did last season go relative to y'all's expectations? Because I feel like it was an overachieving year based on what a lot of people were expecting from Baylor.
Well, I think what stood apart the most to me is just how, I guess, in 2 acts it was, right? There was that first half of the year where, frankly, a lot of things went wrong for them, and they just came out of the bye and set the world on fire. And so I think that for that reason, like, it's, to me, always going to be seen as a setup season, right? Like, I think that it puts more importance on 25 than 24, but I think more than anything, right, this was the year where it kind of solidified that Dave Aranda is like going to be the coach of Baylor and is somebody who has a future in this job. It's not just, of course, going and winning 8 games, which certainly was important. It wasn't just the run at the end of the year that was important. But I think on top of that, you look at kind of all the upgrades that they've had both on and off the field, right? Whether it's talking about retaining players like Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington, whether it's the recruiting class that they brought in, they have a lot of players that they're excited about, whether it's both retaining staff and adding new staff at some key positions. By the way, one of whom, Paul Gonzalez, very weird to see him in a Baylor polo, longtime TCU defensive backs coach for people who don't know. But I think that when you just talk about the on-field products, like they managed to find some identity on both sides of the ball, I think, in a way that I think is bigger than just the 2024 season. So like you can't give it more than like a B plus, like you can't get to the A tier because of just how miserable they were in the first half of the season. But it really speaks to this roster and this staff that when what happened against Colorado happened, they were able to bounce back from it. So I think it'll be remembered fondly. For Baylor people listening, it reminds me a lot of the 2018 Baylor season where Matt Rule, coming off 1-11, manages to fight back and make a bowl game. It reminds me a little bit of the second half of the season in 2012 where Lake Seastrunk breaks out and you kind of have this setup season. But to me, I mean, look, if this is the peak of this group, it's not good enough. But I think that if you view it as a setup season, it was really encouraging.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, expectations, just from like a fan perspective, were very low. There's a big portion of people who didn't want to run this thing back going into 2024 and didn't really have high expectations for the coaching staff in general. And then the first part of the season happens, and that's turned up to 11. If you across social media or message boards and things of that nature, and then like Shahan said, it just flips a switch, and at Texas Tech, which no one thought they were going to go to Lubbock and do what they did.
That felt like the last game of the Aranda era, especially because, I mean, again, people have to remember, right? It's Joey McGuire on the other sideline who they picked Aranda over. And it was just such a moment where it felt like the vibe was going to shift. And it did, just nowhere in the way that we thought.
Yeah. Raised my eyebrows for sure. Yeah.
And Dave Aranda's like undefeated in Lubbock. So we got that going for us.
Yeah, but there are worse things.
It was just like, then once they started going on the streak, is like expectations. You're like, okay, what can we do? And then very few people said, we're just going to win out. Let's just win out and finish 8-4. And then that's what happened. So,
Shehan, you mentioned Paul Gonzalez, and that truly is. I mean, people need to understand how good of a hire that is for Baylor because, I mean, there was a period of time where he was kind of a defensive coordinator in waiting, or maybe even a head coach in waiting. Some people in the program at TCU were talking about. But Shehan, you've tweeted about it. Just the absurdity that is now Corey Coleman and Kendall Briles, and like half of that 2010s Baylor staff now being at TCU, and Gary Patterson and Paul Gonzalez serving time in Waco. What is y'all's opinion on all this? We're living in the upside down.
Well, and Jared Anderson also is now tight ends coach at Baylor, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of TCU fans will remember him as a not very good offensive line coach, but he was a very good position coach, right? Like he has great relationships in the state, and I think has been a huge part of Baylor's recruiting success. It's really weird, first of all, right? Like to be sitting here and see a lot of guys who I covered be a part of TCU staff now, and certainly vice versa with TCU people going to Baylor. I mean, certainly a big thing that you have to look at on the front of, well, really both programs is like there are key people and key staff members and key advisors from each program that have gone to the other place, right? With Baylor, you talk about Gary Patterson coming over, and I think having a really notable influence on Dave Aranda and helping him grow as a coach. Well, I think that's a big part of the reason that Jared Anderson and Paul Gonzalez are there now. And on the TCU side of things, of course, Kaz Kazadi being kind of chief among them, strength coach, right? He was part of Sonny Dykes' staff at SMU, that then went over to TCU with him. I think that he's played a pretty notable role in recruitment as well. Brian Norwood, also, by the way, former defensive coordinator at Baylor, came over as part of all of that. So I do think that's something to remember. And this is a question that I get all the time as a national reporter is like, oh, is it hard to put your fan hat or whatever to the side? And it's like, I mean, here's the thing, right? When you're behind the scenes like this, like, yeah, there's rivalry. Everybody wants to beat everybody. There are personalities who don't like each other. And Lord knows those head coaches in the 2010s did not care for each other. But like, everybody here is coworkers, right? Everybody here are in the industry together. And while they might not get along, while they might be trying to beat people, like the reality is too, I mean, I think that if you're, if you're Dave Aranda, if you're Baylor, like you got to admire what Paul Gonzalez accomplished at TCU over all those years. And if you're Sonny Dykes and, you've gotten a chance to be in the state at SMU, at TCU, previously as an assistant at Texas Tech, like you got to admire what Baylor was able to do with their staff in the 2010s as well. So it's a weird deal. I can't think of very many places that have so much overlap at this point. Although I guess you could make the comparison with TCU stealing SMU's coaching staff a couple years ago. But
yeah.
But I mean, this is kind of it, right? And especially in the state of Texas, where everybody, everybody knows everybody. Everybody's trying to beat everybody, and everybody admires everybody. I mean, this is kind of the way of the world in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Norwood, also like Randy Clements is also there. So like it's littered with former Baylor staffers, now a player, because now you bring in Corey Coleman. I don't think there is a school with this much overlap. Go back to the historical beginnings of TCU and Baylor, like being in the same town, and then you mentioned the fire extinguisher, like the whole fire and all, and that of it all. So. And that's continued for 100+ years of history between the two schools. So it makes it unique in that sense, the rivalry itself. And that's what makes it one of the best rivalries, definitely in our part of Texas and, former Southwest Conference.
Yeah.
And it's fun to like always hate each other.
Oh, true. Yes.
And by the way, like I one that I think gets a little bit left under the radar. If I'm not mistaken, Josh Bookbinder, who was just he was just hired as, I believe, a linebackers coach at TCU. He's actually, I believe, Grant Taft's grandson, like the legendary old Baylor coach. So like it's just so many ties between these programs right now.
Yeah, it's like truly Hatfields and McCoys. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Brownie, cease and desist with your disgusting behavior. Okay, get that out of my chat. Okay, so one other like rabbit trail I want to go down, since we didn't have this opportunity to really talk last off season, is where do y'all stand on going away from the rivalry and rebranding this as the Bluebonnet Battle?
What is that? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's just something that I've heard, on the street. I can't confirm or deny if that's actually something that's happening.
I think Shan, we would agree that we're not fans.
Yeah, I mean, I feel real bad for as somebody who was in student government for a couple of years. I feel really bad for what they stepped themselves into, because I don't think that they realized what the reaction was going to be. Because like the idea, of course, was like, let's just make this a real rivalry and a trophy game, right? Like TCU has the iron skillet. Like Baylor and TCU should have something. I think it's fair to say that like what came about probably wasn't exactly the move. But you just don't know it, because like, you hear rumors like, well, it was TCU people who didn't want like such a religiously toned, right? Like, you don't know, right? Like, you don't know where this stuff is coming from. So I'm sympathetic to the people who tried to make it happen, but like, it's the rivalry. Everybody outside is gonna keep talking, calling it that.
Yeah. I mean, if they would have come up with a name that was more palatable to both fan bases, then we would have moved on from the rivalry. That was organically created from both fan bases though too. So it was, people had a lot of like emotional investment into that.
And I get the idea, right? Like, I mean, there's like the history of like the old Blue Bonnet Bowl. There's like, it's a phrase and a word that means a lot in the state of Texas.
The state of Texas,
but like, I just think there are more intertwining things that I feel like would have been more relevant, right? It doesn't have to be like the religious aspect. Obviously, that's, I think, made it kind of amusing, but there's stuff that's related to like I-35. There's stuff that's related to being private. There's a lot of different ways that you could have gone. I think that they chose a very safe route, and at a time when nobody really wanted a safe route, everybody wanted something wacky and dumb.
Yeah. Well, before we move into 2025, something I got to let all of y'all know about: get your business, product, service, or personal brand to the next level by partnering with the voice of college football. See what our partner Win Agency has to say about its sponsorship experience with us. Let's discuss how you can also reach your target market. Contact us at sponsorships@VOCFB today to get yourself set up with a sponsorship on one of our fabulous shows. I mean, why not start with the biggest 12? So moving on into 2025, what, gentlemen, are the biggest questions that you feel like need to get answered in fall camp for this Baylor squad?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is, I'll point to two. One, in the secondary, it's been a growing process, right? But there's a reason that they ultimately did make staff changes there. And there's a reason that they ultimately decided to ask for help in some ways. This hasn't been a consistent unit. They've got some bodies back there. They've got some players that they're excited about, but just the level of consistency and level of depth has not been there. I think that when you look at some of their bigger struggles early in the year, it was teams that could pass over the top of them. I especially look at that Colorado game, of course, as being a key example of that. Even Iowa State, right? Iowa State with their two NFL receivers, like they just went past him over and over again. When they played more teams later in the year, now, again, TCU is a team that I think they were able to have some success against, but like they were mostly teams that didn't pass at an elite level, and they were able to keep the game in front of them and stop the run at a high level. So they have to continue getting better on that back end. They have a lot of guys back. I mean, I think of like, Caden Jenkins was a player who was kind of billed as a breakout star for them in a lot of ways in 2024. And there were moments that were good and there were moments that weren't as good. Again, you think of a player like Tevin Williams, also an upperclassman player who still hasn't quite hit the level that they need him to be at. I think also at safety, like they just haven't done a good job of taking the ideal angles necessarily. That's something that I think when you bring in a guy like Paul Gonzalez, you expect that to improve to an extent. The other piece too, and it kind of sticks with the passing game, is Baylor is really not starting over, but they have a lot of turnover at wide receiver. And you look last season, a lot of big time players. Josh Cameron, really their top target, is back. But other than that, I mean, and I think that Ashton Hawkins was able to get another year of eligibility. That does help matter.
Yeah.
Michael Trigg at tight end, of course. But, you bring in Kobe Prentice from Alabama. He's somebody who needs to step up big. Jaden Porter as well is a young player who they're really excited about. You kind of need that dynamic guy to go along with some of these receivers who are more possession guys. So again, the return of Hawkins, I think, is a big deal from that perspective. He was one of those JUCO guys who managed to get a hidden year of eligibility after the Diego Pavia ruling, but you, I think, still need to really grow up that room and have them playing at a high level.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Shehan just said. Also, I look at like linebacker as well. Matt Jones moving on. I mean, your mileage may vary with your Matt Jones experience as a Baylor fan, but he had a tons of experience. He kind of held down that position for several years. They brought in some like transfer portal, linebackers to kind of fill that void. And then you have Keaton Thomas coming back, who is all conference last year. And that's one thing we talk about Dave Aranda and the changes that he made as far as like taking over the defense. I mean, he was the linebackers coach, inside linebackers coach. And his first year doing that at Baylor, 2 first team all conference linebackers. So you have confidence in bringing in new guys and being able to coach them up. But everything with the secondary, that's the biggest really question mark after last season. And like Shehan said, just bringing in Paul Gonzalez, that's one of the main reasons why that came to fruition.
Yeah. Well, also, where would you, I mean, another question I had, because the Big 12 has really turned into a quarterback league again. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in this conference. Where do you think Sawyer Robertson ranks among the Big 12's elite quarterbacks?
It's a great question because, like, I think it's pretty wide open, right? Like, the guy to me who kind of sits at least on paper at the top right now is Sam Leavitt at Arizona State. I think Sawyer is in the same tier. Like, I think that he is that level of player. You look at metrics like QBR over at ESPN. You look at PFF ratings. Like, he ranks number 1 in a lot of these metrics. Actually, if you look at EPA, total EPA for a quarterback, even though he wasn't the full-time starter, he was number 1 in the Big 12 in it. And actually, I believe that in QBR, he's the number 1 returning quarterback in all of college football. Now, look, you put a little bit of you take a little bit of a grain of salt with some of this stuff, right? Like, obviously, the advanced numbers only tell you so much, but I do think it tells you that he is of that level and in that tier. I think he needs to continue to get more consistent. I think that we saw a little bit of that in the second half of the year, but again, you need to see it across a whole season. I think that also, and some of this has to do with the wide receivers continuing to get better. Like, I want to see a little bit more downfield too, right? Like, I think that he has shown the arm strength and the ability to get downfield, but a lot of this stuff, like, it's actually kind of funny. I mean, I don't want to draw too much comparison, right? But like, some of the stuff that he did in 2024 reminded me a lot of like mid-career pre-injuries Charlie Brewer in like the most positive of ways, right? Like, where he was able to escape and create opportunities with his legs and keep his eyes downfield. I think that you want to see that continue with also the ability to deal just a little bit more downfield from the pocket. I think he has it in him. I think the offensive line obviously has improved a lot from 23 to 24 and hopefully into 25 as well. But like, again, there is no reason that he can't be the number 1 quarterback in the Big 12. There's a lot of guys right there at maybe like a B+ level in the Big 12. I think he's one of the few who has an A within him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's kind of like a 1A, 1B situation for me with Leavitt and Sawyer. And, I could argue all day that I would say I'd put him above Leavitt, but I'm admittedly a homer. So, but I see the argument. And I think they're like they would be the top tier of the Big 12. And then, like Shan said, there's a bunch of next level, very good quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, of course, we can't talk about Sawyer Robertson without mentioning this moment. Listen, y'all, there is nothing that makes me more viscerally furious than stupid Baylor doing things that I love. And it just happens so often these days. Where do you guys get off? I mean, what's the deal? So it's just like Dave Aranda and Matt Rowe. I'm like, these coaches are so incredibly likable. Stop it. Stop hiring likable coaches that I want to see succeed. Okay, so let's take a minute and look at the schedule for next year. And, and it's pretty front loaded, but it's not unbearable. See what I did there? I mean, a lot of winnable games, particularly down the stretch. Once you get into November, of course, who the heck knows what the conference is going to look like when the season actually starts. But what are y'all's big takeaways from this schedule?
Well, I think that it's a really interesting schedule, especially from the perspective of it'd be easy to fly early or it would be easy to fall apart early, right? Like there is a possibility. I don't obviously predict it, but like there's a possibility that they're 1-3, right? And completely out of Big 12 contention and playoff contention just because of what they have early. They play Auburn in the opening game. That's going to be a Friday game, which means I might actually be able to go to it. We'll see. They go to SMU. I guess that's down the street. Maybe I can go to their first, and I'm not really going to go to the first two, but like, those are two big games where you kind of come out and have an opportunity to prove something. If you're 2-0 after those two games going against an SEC team and a playoff team, like you are pushing top 10 at that point, heading into a game against Arizona State that really could shape the Big 12 title race. So they have to come out fast. They have to come out early. I think it's one of the reasons why retaining Jake Spavital, retaining Sawyer Robertson was so critical to this team. But like you mentioned it, if you're able to get through the early stretch, Auburn, SMU, Arizona State, you add Kansas State to that, which is also a home game, like then things start to open up. That TCU game's going to be big, but Cincinnati you expect to be better than. UCF is rebuilding. Utah's got a new offense. Like there's a lot of opportunity for Baylor in 2025 if they're able to take care of business early. But it has to be obviously from the beginning different than it was last season.
Yeah. Also, what jumps out to me, the schedule is due to like the 16 team, the teams that you miss, like not having Texas Tech on there, who have made a lot of noise on transfer portal in the off season, and a lot of people they're getting a lot of hype, and the Texas Tech way.
Sure.
But to miss them, that's pretty big considering like they're really going all in on winning now in Lubbock. So that's interesting.
Shout out Cody Campbell, right?
Yeah. Hey, we all had those billionaires.
Yeah. You also avoid BYU too.
Yeah, avoid BYU. I was going to say that. I think the other thing too, right, is like you get Arizona State early enough that maybe they're still transitioning a little bit. I mean, look, the reality is like, I don't think that this is a surefire best team in the Big 12 necessarily, but I think this is a team that could be in the 9-10 win range. I think you have to split those first two at least to be in that conversation. Obviously, it won't impact Big 12 standing, but I think it will impact the way that you feel about this team. So let's say that they split the first two, if you get Arizona State, and then again, you get Kansas State at home, if you go 3-1 in those games, like you're sitting in a pretty good position at that point. And, again, I think that we look back as well. And I mean, star power and experience at the quarterback position, I think has really rarely been as important as it is right now. And I think that Baylor's got it.
Yeah. It's also outstanding. I mean, just like your road schedule is so nice. I mean, Oklahoma State's a tough road game.
Is it right now?
Well,
we don't know.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they're not a very good team. It's a tough place to play. But I mean, really, outside of TCU, like, do you have a hard road game? Like, I don't think so. And you get Baylor at home, you get Arizona State at home, and early, like you said. I mean, Brownie said it. I mean, how many people in Waco are thinking, is this the year that shatter that glass ceiling and go to the playoffs? What do y'all think?
Yeah, and we got Mac Rhodes as the chairman of the playoff committee, so we got all things
true
going.
That's true.
It'll be really funny when he has to explain why he has Baylor lower. That's gonna be something else. No, look. The reality is, right, like what I want people to remember, and I think 2024, just the way that things worked out are a good example, right? If you're in conference contention, you're in playoff contention. Like this is not the same as trying to push for the top four. This, obviously I don't see Baylor as a top 4 team in the country necessarily, but I see them as one of a couple of leaders to contend right in the Big 12. And I think that it's not inconceivable that they could be on the edge of the at-large conversation as well if they end up in that position. Because, I mean, again, like you see also some of the wins that they have the opportunity to have. Like if you have Auburn at SMU versus Arizona State early, like how many teams are going to have not even just resumes that good, but also like have beaten that many name brand teams at that point, right? Like Arizona State was just in the playoff last year. SMU was just in the playoff last year. Auburn, obviously, they have high expectations, in Hugh Freeze's third year. So like, it's just a lot of things could go your way if you're able to take advantage of it. Now, I think that for me, like I would probably have Baylor closer to maybe like 3 or 4 in the Big 12 right now. But I think that you can't look at this team and not believe that there's some upside there.
Yeah, and not very many teams. I know whenever the schedule was made, SMU wasn't a Power 4 team, but they have since become one. So very few teams you start off with, like of your 3 non-cons, 2 are Power 4 opponents. And even if you look across, I mean, Sheehan knows this. He covers all of college football. Like Matt Rule's coming out saying, like, why would you schedule those types of games in this environment that we have now? So if you can come out there, if you can get those taken care of early on, it's going to set up not just how you go about the season, how the rest of college football nationally views Baylor as a team going forth throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would, by the way, like to complain on behalf of Baylor and TCU that somehow we both have 2 playoff teams within the first month of the season. We're both playing Arizona State and SMU. Us is actually back-to-back, and neither of us are playing Tech, and that's just ridiculous. Like a world without the Butt Bowl, I'm not sure that that's a world I want to live in. Why are we not playing Baylor Tech and TCU Tech every year? I don't know. We should have pods.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents. But if y'all had to make a win prediction right now for Baylor, where do you think the Bears end up?
I think that they end up around 9-3. And again, if one of those games is non-conference, like that's 7-2 in conference, I think you're right there in the conversation to go to the conference championship game at that point. Again, 10's there, like 10's available, but it is a lot also to play 11 power conference games. Like that's a grind. We saw West Virginia, obviously year after year, kind of struggle to deal with it. It's just a tough thing to do physically. Like, and I think it probably does look like that, right? It probably does look like they go 3-1 in those tough early games, drop somewhere, something somewhere else, right? Like drop a game that they maybe aren't supposed to lose. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the thing that's hilarious kind of about the 16-team league is that when it was 10 and you have 10 teams that are really functioning at a high level, like it really was a very week to week thing, right? Like it was a very, like, if you look down for 1 second, you could mess up. There is a little bit more grace, I think, in a 16-team league where you kind of have more true lower tier teams. But I mean, again, like Cincinnati has a really good quarterback in Brendan Sorsby. Like Houston, you expect to take a step in 2025. Like it's not going to be easy, but I do think that when you look at that latter half of the season, the hope certainly would be that you can kind of ride a strong start to a pretty special finish.
Yeah, I'm right around that same range. I would probably lean more towards the 10-win mark, but I think 9-3, 10-2, coming off of the 8-4 season and the steps they made offensively last year, you would expect that progression to continue. But they're always going to be weird games. You're going to beat SMU, beat Auburn, and then lose a weird game to like Cincinnati or Houston or something like that. And those happen throughout the Big 12 for every team. So I would think that would be, I'm a little bit more of a sunshine pumper on that end, whereas I look at things positively. But yeah, I think 9-3, 10-2 is right about the right spot.
Well, and I think one thing that is going to be interesting is just because of those 2 non-conference games, like Baylor could be a lot better this year and only win 1 more game, right? Yeah. Like it just might work out like that. And really be a Hail Mary away from having the same record year over year. But just because of the way that the schedule works out and just because of who you play in non-conference, I still think that a 9-3 season could be a huge step depending on how it kind of works itself out.
Awesome. Well, I promised Sheehan 45 minutes, and we are just a handful of seconds over 45 minutes. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on all social media platforms, Sheehan J. Raja. I guess we gotta diversify now after everything's crashing down. And then you can read all my work over at cbssports.com.
Yeah, and you can find me on the podcast at the Bear Den Pod on all social media platforms, and then thebeardenpod.com.
Check them out, folks. 2 Class A human beings, and always welcome on the show. Also, please subscribe to this show at Big 12 VOCFB. Do it. Let's make this thing grow. Follow me on Twitter at Clint_Foster55 and my personal YouTube channel at Clint Foster Comedy, where you're going to see that feature documentary here very, very soon. It's coming along very nicely, folks. Until next week, which will be Arizona State week, so get excited about that. I love you. I hope your team wins. And go Big 12. We'll see you around, folks.